Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mon Kurian. Today I'm going live from Tidius Academy, Tiruvalla branch. Hope all of you are doing good. And let's begin today's session. Today I'll be discussing or talking about the IELTS speaking part 2 strategy. If you remember, in my last live session, I gave you information about the tips on how to perform or do your best or how to ace your part 2. Now, I'll be talking about or speaking about how you can set up a strategy to get good scores in your part 2. That's your cue card or your task card session. So let's go ahead and begin our session. Okay, so let's see. In IELTS speaking part 2, you'll be given a topic or a cue card or a task card similar to this. So let's read this cue card or the task card. So this task card, the cue card says, describe a plant grown in your country. And then you have a couple of sub questions or the prompts, and it says, you should say what the plant is, where it is grown, why you like or dislike it, and explain why it's important to your country. So when you get a cue card or your task card, it will be like this. And it will be kept in your table. The examiner will, after finishing your warm-up session, the examiner is going to tell you that we are done with part 1, your warm-up. Now we are going to move over to your part 2. That's your cue card or your task card session. And the question will be there in your table. The moment you flip the question, the paper, and you start reading, preparing, your timer starts and you have 60 minutes. So you'll have 1 minute or 60 seconds to make notes. And then will be asked to speak for between 1 to 2 minutes. So this is the time frame of your part 2 cue card or your task card session. Okay, now let's see what does it say. Speaking for 2 minutes on an unfamiliar topic scares most IELTS students, and that's why IELTS speaking part 2 is one of the most feared parts of the exam. The problem seems to be running out of things to say or not knowing what to say because you're unfamiliar with the cue card suggestions. So a cue card in the suggestions, the prompts that says you should say why, when, how, where, and then finally the end is always the same. It's your experience, how you felt about it is what it comes, the last one, your experience. So it's unfamiliar, even though you practice a lot, you're familiar with most of the practice sessions, but then you don't know what cue card because you cannot memorize all the questions, right? It's not possible. So it is unfamiliar. You don't know what cue card you're going to get. So you have to be prepared for it. So don't worry. Let's see how we can set up a strategy and go ahead and get good scores in your part 2. So a common error is thinking you have to talk about exactly what's written on the card. You don't. Having spoken to several IELTS examiners and students who have achieved very high marks in their speaking test, I can assure you that you don't have to cover everything on the cue card. The band descriptors also doesn't mention anything about answering all the suggested parts of task 2. So, so you know the cue card. I'll just show it to you once again. This is your cue card. So as per the band descriptors, it's once you get a cue card, you have these, you should say what the plant is, where it's grown and why you like it or dislike, and finally, why is it important to your country, right? It's not that you have to speak on all your prompts. You can skip, right? So you don't have to worry about answering all the prompts. You don't have to worry about it. Following the suggested sentences on the card is fine, and many candidates do well following them. But others run out of ideas. More importantly, if you have a structure to follow for every question, you can practice and prepare more effectively. So what happens? If you follow those prompts, it's easy. Why? It's already giving you the directions, right? You go do this, say about this, or talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. If you're good at framing ideas spontaneously at that moment, in that 160 seconds you get, it's great. If not, it's fine. You don't have to worry about it. So how does the strategy work? Let's see. When you get the cue card, you will be given 1 minute to write down some ideas. You're going to use this time wisely by using the following structure. On a piece of paper, provided written down 5 write down 5 headings with a little space between each one. The first one will be your introduction. That's how you say. You start with your introduction, right? You paraphrase the question and you start. Then it's the past. Then you have your description. Then you give your opinion. Then you talk about the future. That's how it works. Here also at Tiruvalla, TUS Academy Tiruvalla, this is how we prepare our candidates for the Q card session. Fine. Let's see. Introduction. The first part. As you know, what is introduction? So make sure you paraphrase the question and then start. Start off by saying, I'd like to talk about the topic, what you've been given, the Q card topic. Then say, I choose this topic because, and then you go on. And you'll be able to say why you choose this topic. If you can't think of a reason, just make one up. Although it's always better to talk about real experiences. So, if you remember in the tip session, when I did that last live session, I told you in the tips, it's always good if you get a cue card or a task card, it's always good to talk about your real experiences. If you've already faced it or you've done it, you've seen it, you've been to that place or whatever, what depends upon the question. If you've already experienced that, it's easy, right? You don't have to worry about making up a new or setting up a new cue card or a task card. So it comes out naturally. You know what you have done, what you have seen, how your experience was. So you don't need to worry about it if you have experienced it. But what happens? If you're not ready, you have to make one up, right? So you have to make namala experience telling you that cue card is totally new, right? You have never done that, you have never seen that place or whatever the cue card, right? Namaka sondamura experience illengi, you have to make one up and you have to make that one. The one cue card that you have to prepare is in 60 seconds. 60 seconds are time namakku kittunna. In that 60 seconds, what you need to do is jot down as much ideas as possible and start. Nammal ethra koodal ideas idunu, that will be better so that you can speak on it for around 2 minutes. But the time is important because you have to utilize that 1 minute to the fullest, the maximum. That's how you can perform in your speaking session. The 1 minute preparation time, you have to make down the maximum notes, and then the more notes you have, the more keywords you have, keynotes you have, bullet points you have, you can speak on it for a longer time in the next speaking, the 2 minute time that you get. Okay, now let's move over to the next strategy. At the strategy and the past. Now, after you finish your intro, now you have to pause, a small pause, and use a linking word like anyways or anyhow to transition into talking about the past. This way, this will allow you to demonstrate that you are confident using a range of past structures. So as I mentioned, grammar is important. So make sure when you're practicing with your friend or your colleague or your classmate or your batchmate, make sure he or she, whoever is noticing you or you yourself record and see, make sure your tenses are correct. The past, the present and the future, so that you don't get low scores in your tenses. Okay, so now let's move over to the next slide and see what does it say. The third one, that's the description. So once you have done the introduction, the past is over, now you move over to the description about your topic. So now pause again and say, so let me tell you about the topic in a little more detail. So that's how you explain about your experience there. So this is your opportunity to impress the examiner with specific vocabularies. Get to know the common topics and have some specific adjectives ready. If you use an adjective to describe something, make sure you expand it or explain it with examples. Again, if you can't think of specific examples, it's fine to make these up. Make sure your examples match the adjective and you'll be fine. So as I mentioned before, this is the time when you can impress the examiner with vocabulary. So as you know, vocabulary also plays an important role. 25% is on vocabulary, your criteria for scoring your grades. So whenever you're practicing, make sure you have a list of vocabularies for commonly asked cue card questions and prepare it according to what kind of question you get. So it's easy. If you just Google search, you'll get millions of vocabularies for anything that you need. You have your synonyms. Try practicing it. Namal etra practice, the more you practice, the better you become, the perfect you become. So make sure you have a list of vocabularies for common topics ready with you in all your practice sessions and use them. Instead of saying the same word over and over again, try to use vocabularies, new vocabularies, and show that you are good in English. Okay, now let's move over to the opinion part. So what does opinion say? Again, you give a pause, right? After that, when you translate, you're moving over to the next prompt or the next sub-question. You have to give a small pause, right? Now, you can pause and say, if you ask me, in my view, I would say, and the opinion on the topic that you have given. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഏതാ ടോപ്പിക് കിട്ടിയേക്കുന്ന അതിൻ്റെ ഒപ്പീനിയൻ കൊടുക്കാൻ തുടങ്ങണം. You should start saying that. So this gives you a chance to express how you feel about the topic. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കിട്ടിയ ക്യൂ കാർഡിനെ പറ്റി നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ആ സമയത്ത് എക്സ്പ്രസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. Right? That's how you should transition. And also it could be your personal opinion, or it could be a comparative or superlative opinion. It can be general opinion. Using a wide range of phrases to express your opinion will help you get a higher mark or a higher score. If you want to give a stronger opinion, you could say, I strongly believe that. As far as I'm concerned, I'm strongly against it, or I'm strongly against that point of view. I'm strongly in favor of that opinion what you have been given or in the queue. I'm skeptical of the idea that you're not sure. Maybe or may not be skeptical, right? Vano, yes or no. You're somewhere in between, right? I must admit and then I think. That's how you give your opinions about the topic. So make sure all these strategies that I'm giving you today, you make a note of it, and the more you practice, the better you become. So it won't come out easily. It won't come up in one or under nammal cue cards either. It will not come out. You have to do a lot of cue cards, and you have these cue cards readily available. If you Google it, you'll get it. You can download these cue cards, take a printout, or store it in your phone or your laptop, and keep practicing. The more you practice, the better you become. So you'll have your classmates or your friend, family, whoever is helping you with your IELTS examination. Jot down these opinions, these past and the other strategies that I've mentioned before, and go ahead. The more you practice, the better you become. Okay. Now we move on to the future. Finally, you can display your ability to use future tenses. So as I mentioned, past, present, now you're moving over to the future. So make sure you are good in your grammar as well, because grammar also plays an important role there. 25% grammar ilanallo. So when your grammar, your pronunciation and your vocabs work together, your fluency also goes good. So you get a good score. So namakku future nokam. What is future? So finally, you can display your ability to use future tenses. Start off by saying with regards to the future, and then you can use a range of tenses that will help you gain extra scores or extra marks. For example, you could use present continuous to talk about fixed arrangements, right? Present continuous, ing, you see that I'm going, or I have plans, I'll be doing this, right? Your present continuous tenses. So that to talk about your fixed arrangements. Be going plus to plus the infinitive to talk about the future plans. Will or won't plus the infinitive is used with predictions based on opinions or your experiences, right? And then it can also be used to talk about hopes and assumptions. The future perfect is will have plus your past participle is used to say something will have happened or will have been completed by a certain point in the future. So tenses are important, and it's very important. As I said, it's a chain, it's a link, or a chain aita idu povunu. So the more you practice, the better you become. So your tenses is very important. They are very important. Your past tense and your present and your future. That's how you transition from in your topic, your cue card. Ningalku kittunna cue card il ningal angane transition cheyan pattunnu to get a good scores. Your tenses. Likewise, your pronunciation also plays a role, and your vocabulary also plays a role, and that's how when all these work together, you link you get your fluency is going on. You won't be having any lags in between. നമ്മൾ നല്ലപോലെ സംസാരിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് പോകും. right? You will not be humming, you will be not thinking of words. Yes, you will be thinking of ideas, how to say about the topic. Fine, if it's a topic that you have already experienced. നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ if it's a topic that you have already experienced, it's fine. നമ്മൾ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഒരു കുഴപ്പമില്ല. But if it's something new, right, you will be having that gaps or that pauses to think about that topic or the cue card that's given. But it should not be your language related lags, language related ആകല്ലേ. So as I mentioned before, you have to work on your grammar, your pronunciation and your vocabulary skill. As I mentioned before, vocabulary in the list, common topic list ondaki vacheka. Keep it with yourself whenever you're practicing, right? Next to you, keep it next to you and keep on practicing. So what happens is when you're practicing with your vocabularies and your grammar, make sure if you're recording, that's the best. Record yourself and listen to it. What are you saying? And then find out your own mistakes. നമുക്ക് അറിയാലോ where we are going wrong, which is your weak point. നമ്മളുടെ weak point ഏതാണ്? You would know it better, right? Or if you have your friend or your companion, whoever is helping you, they may help you out. They may guide you, right? And that's how you get ahead with your future. That is the future part. Now, finally, the most important thing is that you practice using this strategy with many different topics. Yes, you have to. So if you take a cue card, right, you can just download these cue cards from the web. Internet ishtamole cue cards kittum. Keep practicing using this strategy with different topics. Don't stick on to the one. Use some topics that talk about the past. Use some topics that talk about the present. Use some topics or some cue cards that talk about the future. So what happens is, past in the kore nammal cue cards cheyumbol you will be getting better in your past tenses and how to transition to the present and the future. Likewise, present tense in the kore ipo nadakkunna karyangal undallo. There will be lots of general topics that talk about, describe something that's happening in your country or something that you like. Angane present tense, take those. And then there will be many topics or many cue cards or task cards that talk about the future. Future ne patti samsarikkan ishtam pole cue cards undu. So make sure you juggle it up. Korchu past year, korchu present topics eduthu cheya, korchu future topics edutittu practice. The more you practice, the better you become. And also get some past IELTS speaking part 2 questions and ask a friend or a classmate or your colleague, whoever is helping you, to give you them at random. Yes, so that's also a good idea. So tell your whoever you're practicing with, let in a day practice a 5 or 6 cue cards oru dosam or 5-6 cue card practice cheyumbo. What happens is, shuffle it up. Take a couple of past, take a couple of present ones, take a couple of future ones and prepare yourself in 1 minute. So the preparation is where you get the most of the ideas. And make sure, as I mentioned before, if you have personally experienced it, it would come out naturally because you have been through it. Nammal adu already kandittunde, cheyidittunde, and you have seen it, you have done it. So you know what your experience was, right? If not, nammal adu cheyidittillengi, nammal adu poyittillengi, if it's a totally new rant or totally new cue card aanengil, don't worry, right? You have to make up. You cannot change your cue card, right? We don't have the option to tell the examiner to change your cue card and give you a different cue card, or a different cue card namukku choikkan pattathilla. So whatever the cue card is given to you, you have to speak on it. So you have to prepare first and speak on it. So don't worry. If you practice with all these past, present and future, randomly nammal correct practice you, but the more you practice, the better you become, right? So if you get totally out of the nammal cheyathora cue card aayirikkum, you have no idea about it. But don't worry, because you have practiced so much, nammal nallole practice cheyidittundengi, it will come out naturally to you, right? So you can make up, you can cook up a story. Nammal oru story undakittu samsarikkuva, prepare, put down some ideas. Nammal 1 minute time wisely use it, prepare yourself and then start speaking on it. Okay, you can start off slowly by using the post to help you, but after a lot of practice, this strategy will become natural for you. Yes, and you'll be able to answer any part 2 questions with confidence. So as I mentioned, the more you practice, the better you become. And when you go for your examination, your final examination, IELTS speaking examination, you'll be confident. That nervousness, anxiousness will come down a lot. If you're practicing, you're confident enough, you know how to If you get a cue card, you know how to prepare it and how to answer those in 2 minutes, it's fine. And I'm pretty sure if you're going through these strategies, what happens is, most of the time, the examiner will stop you before that. You don't have to speak for the full 2-minute length. That long turn, long turn, നമുക്ക് 2 minute വരെ സംസാരിക്കേണ്ട ആവശ്യമില്ല. You will not. The examiner is going to stop you before that, maybe 1 minute and 20 or 30 seconds, and say, you're done. We'll move over to the next part. So don't worry about it. The more you practice, the better you become. So I hope the strategy part helped you, and I'll see you next time in my next live session. Take care, keep practicing. All the best for all the students and all the candidates who are going for the examination this time. I'll see you next time. This is Mon Korean signing off from Tijus Academy, Tiruvalla. Take care. Goodbye.